What do you get when you cross a know-it-all newspaper columnist with an awkward, unsophisticated everyman?
Yeah. Well, I'm just not sure about that right now.
Welcome to Couch and the Roo.
Welcome to Couch in the Roo, presented by Skymint Premium Cannabis, inspiring all of us to do better, feel better, look better every damn day of our lives. Skymint with its countdown to 420, where you can win free weed for a year and other prizes. Go to skymint.com for details, or show up at any Skymint location in the kiosk there. You can register, and boom, you can have free weed for a year. Compliments of Skymint. And our Tuesday night show, also brought to you by our friends at Front 43 Neighborhood Pub and Cask & Company Kitchen and Bar, where I was both last Friday and Sunday. Fantastic salmon.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, sorry about that. Fantastic salmon on Sunday. Great Big Island bowl, sushi bowl on Friday. Just a fantastic menu and drink selection. Great place to watch a game, watch some soccer on Sunday afternoon there. And yeah.
Oh, that's why you didn't invite me.
Yeah, you wanted to be there Sunday. Yeah. Incredible place to watch any sport. TV setups just as good as it gets. Good company, good vibe, good atmosphere. Front 43 and Cask & Company just north of Frandor on East Saginaw in Lansing. Jason, how you doing, brother?
I mean, Zion was a big deal because he was a huge guy, and I just broke my chair.
What's going on, buddy? Did you survive the 9:20 start last night?
I did.
That's all I heard everyone complaining about.
A lot of complaining.
Jesus Christ. You think you can't just get like 6 hours of sleep? Like, what time do you get up? I understand that, but you need 7 to 8.
Or take a nap. Or do something. Like,
right. But,
know,
I mean, it's not like it's going to be on every night of the week at 9:20. I mean, last year it was on at 8:20, but...
Was it 8:20 last year?
Yeah.
It was earlier?
Yeah, because it was local time there, right? Houston?
No, I don't think... I think it's the TV that dictates it. I don't think it doesn't matter where it is. I think it's always about 9 o'clock. Maybe I'm...
Because I thought it was always at 9:20.
Yeah,
like, as far as I can remember, and I'm like, my memory's terrible, but...
This seems to be hedging a little bit later. Like 8:30 is probably the perfect time, to be honest, because you do have to be. I know half the country is in the Eastern time zone, but you have to be respectful that we're not the only time zone. Like, don't be that chode that thinks like you're the only one who exists. And like out west, if you have it before 6:20, like people are scrambling to get home from work. If you live in LA, it's a 4-hour commute. You'd have to leave at 1 p.m. anyway to make it home. I get that it's one late night, but it's not any later than an 8 p.m. football game because it's a shorter game, or an 8 p.m. baseball game every year before this. Like, it's not perfect.
If it were baseball, I could understand because there's no time limit, really.
I was hanging out with two guys last night who get up every morning between 4 and 5 a.m. One who'd gotten up at 3 a.m. that morning. One's a teacher, and like...
Jesus, what time does school start?
Well, they do a lot of their best work in the morning before they have to deal with, all the delinquents. And... no offense to Gavin Haas and others in your generation. But they were able to make through it. You rally for a night. It's not perfect.
Well, how drunk are you getting? I mean,
and I'd rather have the Final Four on Saturday night. That's the event night. That's the biggest night in college hoops than the Saturday anyway. So yeah, there was a lot of.
I'm an idiot. I was reading this article. It said it was in Houston this year, so the local start time was 8:20. I read it as if it were last year. It was 8:20. But like I said, I always remembered it at like 9-ish or something like that. And it ended at what? Before midnight?
Yeah. Look, I remember being young and trying to convince my dad to let me stay up for it. And 87 was the first one he did. And the deal was I had to take a nap beforehand.
My dad would always let me stay up, but he would say, "Your ass better be up when that alarm hits at 6:15 or whenever morning. I got up." Yeah, for school. You can stay up as late as you want, but you better be up and ready to hop in the shower and get to school.
Yeah,
I was like, deal.
It's not perfect. It's once in a while, and I don't think you want to mess with Saturday. You don't want to put it on Sunday because you don't want it opposite right after the women's game. That would completely overshadow that some years. It's okay the way it is. 8:30 be a better start time. Probably get better TV ratings. I don't know.
Seems like the women's game is going to overshadow the men's game for a while, even though the ratings weren't really. The men's game still got more viewers, right?
Oh, did it? I didn't see it. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a fair bit of college basketball today, a fair bit of Michigan State basketball. Rick Carter, former Michigan State graduate assistant, still plugged in with the program a little bit, but he's been an assistant coach a lot of places since at the Division I level. We're going to talk about Michigan State's roster and who might come back, and if they come back, what that means, like in terms of next year's team. What's actually best for MSU? Is it best if everybody comes back that might come back? Is it best that you're able to grow into something else? We'll get into that conversation with Rick Carter in a bit. Harry Gagnon will come on after that, and we'll go through our Masters picks and best bets. And this is one of my favorite weeks of the year, Jason. I mean, you go from like college basketball Final Four, Premier League's back, which I love too. But then the Masters weekend, first weekend when it really feels like spring. You see people in polos and warm weather, although it might be cold there this year. Whatever. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to doing those picks and maybe even some baseball picks. The Tigers last night completely screwed. I'm going to have to get used to the fact they're not going to go 0-162.
Buenos tardes. It is time for the Detroit Tigers Gambling Update with Gramanito Couch and Jason Nick.
I'm glad that you realized that they weren't going to go 0-162, though.
Well, they look so bad against Tampa Bay, and then they go into a 3-game series against Houston. I'm like, it can't get better, right? Or 4, I don't know how long the series is. But and last night I was like, I'm on Houston tonight, and by the time most people listen, that result could go whichever way.
They lost.
But I had to drive my wife down to the Battle Creek train station last night. Drop her off, push her out the car door. By the way, we the episode of Seinfeld where Kramer absolutely tests how far you can go without gas in the car, and he's on the bridge, and it's just like I want to see. That was us last night. We get in the car. We didn't leave a lot of extra time to take her to Battle Creek. I realized about 10 minutes in that, we are very, very low. And
doesn't an alarm go off?
There was a light.
It doesn't on our Mazda outside, so I get caught up in that low gas thing too. But for what's a 45-mile drive, we were cutting it a little close. And I did the math in my head. I'm like, I think we got this. I think we do. And this is why you get the AAA 100-mile tow. Otherwise, you just have them tow you the rest of the way. But we get there, and I drop her off. I restart the car, and I know there's a gas station about 2.5 blocks away. And I could feel, that feeling when you're just about out of gas and the car's like lunging a little bit? Right.
Yeah, I could feel that. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be pushing
going on
this.
Fumes.
Yeah, we did it. We're going to find out exactly how big this tank is. Was kind of fun to do it.
But that's the worst, though, if you get stuck on the side of the road, though, without gas. And you have someone come and bring one of those canisters for you.
Especially if you're a 43-year-old dude who should have learned that lesson 20 years ago. How long does it take to stop? You could have just put like $10 in or something at least. Yeah, we had the time. I didn't. Eventually, then it became part of a game for me. Like, I think we can make it. I want to make it. And so we were going to test it. And I promised her if we didn't make it, that I would just drive her all the way to Chicago if we missed her train. So that's why she went along with the ploy. Point being on the Tigers, the way back, I'm listening to the Houston Astros broadcast, and
no Dan Dickerson.
Well, because it was on satellite radio and they do the home broadcast there, and so I just flipped on the first thing I could find, and listening to the Tigers beat the Astros, or at least have success against them for a little while till I stopped listening, was incredibly frustrating. I don't know that I love betting against the Tigers every day. I'm going to do it all summer, but it sucked because I was getting pissed off at the Tigers' success against the Astros last night. I was getting ticked off at their announcers. The whole thing was just a bad experience.
But you shouldn't feel bad about it. If you're going to play terrible baseball, I'm going to bet against you. I don't really feel bad. Like when I did last year, Michigan State, Duke first half, when I took Duke first half, that was complete ass because that was the NCAA tournament. But if they're going to play horrendous baseball, I don't really care.
Yeah,
it doesn't make me sad.
I'm not changing my play. I'm just going to, I won't listen to that broadcast crew again because they pissed me off and it didn't go my way.
Now when I gamble, because I have the MLB package, when I'm betting, I pick the announced team for my bet.
Okay.
Because you can't listen to the opposing team, right?
Well, that's what I had, though. I had the Astros to win. I was listening to Astros announcers.
Well, then you should have been fine.
Yeah, except things were going well for the Tigers, and they were just like, oh, well, we're still the best team in baseball, so who really cares coming off the World Series? It just was frustrating because they weren't frustrated, too.
Right.
That was what was bothering me.
They need to start gambling.
Yeah, they don't have enough skin in the game. So the other thing last night that I want to get into before we get to Rick Carter here about the national championship game and some thoughts on Michigan State. It's interesting because MSU had the run they did in the postseason and looked like a little bit of a different team that was capable of doing something else, doing something more. And the way the bracket opened up, there is this little bit of what if. What if they had gotten past Kansas State? Could have they beaten Florida Atlantic? Could have they beaten San Diego State? Perhaps. But it was crystal clear last night that they were not going to beat UConn. Michigan State was not going to win a national title this year unless somebody had picked off UConn along the way, which didn't happen. And it made me start thinking about, Michigan State's got a lot of guys coming back, but perhaps, potentially, and a really good team next year. But ultimately, while guard play gets you a long way, and guard play is essential in the postseason, the teams, and you look back at the Villanova, North Carolina, Kansas teams that have won it in recent years, the teams that actually cut down the nets are really, really solid, sturdy, and they have grown men in the paint. And that's what Michigan State didn't really have this year. And that needs to be, like, they can bring anybody back they want, but you can't run it back and you can't just add a little talent unless next year you've got grown men in the paint. They need to make sure that Sissoko is like living in the weight room and playing as much basketball as he can. Carson Cooper's the one we're talking about because you need size. You can't have undersized centers either. The guy is 6'11". You want 20 pounds of muscle on Carson Cooper. The skill is there. Everything else is there. Don't worry about that. He doesn't need what Sissoko needs, which is basketball knowledge and basketball reps. He needs a little of that, but what he needs is strength, and everything else will come with him. Kohler obviously needs to refine his body and become a weapon down there. And then they're going to get Xavier Booker, and you hope he's an advantage in certain ways. I don't think it's going to be with grown man strength, though. I think Carson Cooper becomes him putting on strength, Mady Sissoko even adding strength and being the best version of himself are the two things that are still going to determine whether Michigan State next year has a chance to win the games when it really gets deep in the tournament and you're playing teams like what we saw from UConn last night. You agree?
So does it mean that UConn winning kind of takes the sting out of losing to Kansas State? Kind of the what-ifs are taken out of it, right?
The what-if was not going to include a national title. Now, you can have a day. Like I would say the Michigan State team that loses to North Carolina in 2009, that was
never in question.
Right, elite North Carolina team. But Michigan State still probably beats them 1.5 out of 10 times, right? There's still a game where Michigan State just gets on fire, things go wrong. So you want to have that shot. You want to get that late. I'm not saying it couldn't have happened in the right circumstances where we saw Michigan State shoot to a degree. And it usually doesn't happen in big arenas like that or big stadiums like that. But we saw Michigan State shoot really well in a few games. You could have a game where, they have that 12 for 17 half from three, and they overcome those issues, and they're able to do it even against difficult defense and the physical nature of a UConn. But it's unlikely. And so I think, it does take away. There's a what if they could have gotten to the championship game, which would have been really interesting for this team. But I don't think there shouldn't be a what if they would have won a national title. They were not, even as the bracket opened up, they were not that team. And there was one of those teams, even as everybody else lost, there was one of those teams left, and it was UConn. And they're in another gear than Michigan State. I remember watching UConn play at the PK 85 in Portland and thinking that, I watched Michigan State lose to Alabama and thought, they don't have Malik Hall, they don't have Jaden Akins. Alabama's probably got a higher ceiling, but I think Michigan State 3-4 out of 10 times is going to win that game if they've become the team I thought they could become. I remember watching UConn as they beat up on Alabama later, thinking, I don't know if they have it on the roster. Now, back then, too, there was no sign that Cooper and Kohler were going to become even assets to any degree. But I think that becomes a big part of the focus next year. We'll talk about that and a lot more as we talk some Michigan State hoops with Rick Carter. We'll do that. We'll take a quick break, come back, talk to him. Couch in the Rube, presented by Skymint Premium Cannabis and Front 43 Neighborhood Pub and Cask & Company Kitchen and Bar.
Where else can you cheer on your team, enjoy a mouth-watering burger, or savory sushi? Sip on handcrafted cocktails or one of 46 beers on tap. Take your game day or date night to Cask & Company Kitchen, Bar, or Front 43 Neighborhood Pub near Frandor. 2 amazing places with one awesome blended modern American Asian menu. Catch the game on one of 30 60-inch TVs or stop in for the all-you-can-eat lunch buffet. Enjoy happy hour or elevate your night out at Cask & Company or Front 43 on East Saginaw in Lansing. Ever wondered just how comfortable you can be? Find out with Muskox high-quality flannels. Muskox is a Detroit-based company that creates durable comfort that'll last a lifetime. Muskox flannels are thoughtfully designed with 100% cotton that is ethically sourced and double brushed for softness. This will be the softest flannel you'll ever buy, guaranteed. For every $100 purchase, Muskox will donate $10 to the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. Get comfortable this fall and winter with Muskox flannels. Learn more or order yours today at gomuskox.com. Firekeepers Online Casino and Sportsbook is the site to play. Get your Vegas on right now from your phone, tablet, or laptop. All the hottest slots and tables, plus sports betting featuring in-game wagering. Download the app at firekeeperscasino.com. Go with the name you know. Firekeepers. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and located in Michigan. Gambling problem? Call the Michigan Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-270-7117.
Find Couch in the Rube podcasts on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, CastBox, and the Rube's favorite, Podcast Addict.
Couch in the Rube, presented by Skymint Premium Cannabis. It is time now for our Hopcat interview of the week, of course, presented by Hopcat. Best damn beer bar, world-famous Cosmic Fries, mouth-watering, award-winning burgers, including the Peyton Thorne burger, regardless of whether he is Michigan State's starting quarterback. Tons of TVs to watch the games, and, of course, local beers at every single Hopcat. So it feels like a local brew pub, no matter if you're in East Lansing, Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Indianapolis, wherever you might be. Visit hopcat.com for the location nearest you. And very pleased now to be welcoming a good friend and somebody we've had on the program before to drop a little basketball knowledge. Rick Carter, former Michigan State graduate assistant coach at Xavier, Western Michigan, Missouri, pretty much everywhere around the country you've been an assistant coach. Rick, thanks for coming on, man.
I appreciate you having me. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I wanted to talk a little hoops and little Michigan State hoops with you if you're up for it. A couple things. One, when you watched last night's game between UConn and San Diego State, mostly UConn, and you watched Michigan State at its best this season, how far away was and where did you see Michigan State being away from what you saw from MSU from where UConn is?
I mean, I think what UConn really had, obviously UConn had a great season. They had that lull in the middle, but, they have depth. They have quality depth. And I think at the end of the day, right now with name, image, and likeness, obviously the transfer portal, all of that, it's how can you get continuity and depth at the same time, which is honestly really hard to do, right? Because you're bringing in new guys. How do you get people to kind of mesh together? And obviously Coach Riley and Coach Izzo are very similar in styles. So, I don't think they're that far off. Obviously, I think if some of these guys come back and do their fifth or whatever, sixth or ninth or whatever year they're on, if they come back and do that, then that would help a ton. So I don't think they're that far off. I think they need a couple more pieces.
All right, well let's go there to the Michigan State roster a little bit. One of the things, and I've seen from college basketball teams before, you don't want to run it back as you were, so to speak. You need fresh blood. You need people to be able to grow into new roles, all that stuff. The fresh blood is coming in because you get a Jeremy Fears, you get a Xavier Booker, Cohen Carr, Garrick Norman. You get 4 new faces that will be ready and able to contribute and have and want to prove themselves and carve out roles to different degrees. But you also could wind up with just about everybody back, which if you've got 12 guys who think they're in the rotation is a challenge, especially in this day and age. And, guys who want to grow into new roles. Jaden Akins, maybe more with the ball in his hand, more featured. How do you do that if certain guys are back? In your, as a coach, if this was your roster, would you want it back intact to create that depth, or do you see benefits to certain guys moving on who have had their time?
I would say I would want as many people back as I could possibly get, only because I think the freshmen coming in are totally different than the guys that we currently have. So they push them in different ways. Like, normally when you go out and recruit a class, you look for things that you don't currently have, right, or where you're lacking. So, like, I think a lot of these guys that are coming in bring athleticism, you know, like, that can really, like, help. Because obviously we were a great three-point shooting team, you know, but could we really guard as well as we could in the past? Normally you sacrifice that a little bit when you can really shoot the ball, right? So I think these guys kind of, like, cover up some of the holes that we had before. I think, you know, Xavier Booker, obviously, he can score. He's a big that can actually score. So, like, to answer your question in a nice way, it's so weird because the portal makes things so interesting, but I still think continuity wins. I think guys that know each other and know the system help. You know, I remember my first year at Michigan State as a GA, one of the things that, like, we had an issue with was Maurice Taylor and Zach Randolph.
Marcus Taylor, right?
They were kind of Marcus Taylor, excuse me. They were kind of the guys that could pass things down to the, you know, freshmen coming in, and they had left. So we were kind of starting all over. We didn't have people to kind of pass down the Michigan State tradition. And, like, I think that always is a value. So I think having as many people come back as you can is great. But I do get your point. You know, there's some people that college might have just run its course. It might be time to move on. Because if they're not going to come in and be vested, I think that kind of happened to Gonzaga a little bit. Like, those guys, like Timmy coming back for that many times, like, was he truly bought in through the, like, tough parts of the season? It didn't really seem like that.
Well, so, yeah, I'll give you an example. One guy, for example, that I think is the greatest question. Like, for me, Malik Hall has tremendous value for sure because look how young they are at certain places. His leadership, his maturity. He's a guy who's going to be motivated to have a healthy, better year than a year ago. I just, to me, I see him as him coming back would be an important piece. Tyson Walker, better player than Malik Hall in a lot of ways. Different player, but at his position, where you've got Jeremy Fears Jr. coming in, who's obviously a point guard, but could probably play next to Hogard some, along with Akins there, and you have Jaden Akins who maybe wants to have the ball in his hands a little more and be featured a little more. And so if you're Tyson Walker, you may not be the slide-over backup point guard when Hogard goes out. You may not have the same exact role. Is it much about a guy like that buying into a little bit different role as it is the other guys? Because I mean, I think you've got to let, like, Akins grow into whatever he's going to become as well.
I agree. See, here's what I think, and this I learned this from coaches, ironically enough, so I think this is a good way to look at it. You can really tell Tyson Walker, Joey Hauser, and AJ, like, you're playing 34 minutes a game. We could cut that down to 28 or 29, and you can average more at every spot because you can play harder all the time because we have depth. You can get more in less, you know? And I think that, I mean, think about it. Like, they shot 42% from the three, 46% from the three, 30, like, they retired a lot of those times. They'd play a lot of minutes. Like, 34 minutes a game, that's a lot as a college player. You know, so if you can play less and do more, that obviously helps you later on in your value to the NBA, wherever you're going to go play overseas.
Do you think guys buy into that?
If you, like, again, my second year we went to a Final Four, we had, like, quality depth. We had 10 guys, like, that could really play. And, like, we picked up full court. We did a couple different things, but, like, to be honest, we were really doing it to tire our own guys out along with the other team so we could get to our bench because, again, we had quality depth. So, like, I think as long as you're winning, people will buy into anything. But you got to win. You know, if you don't win, obviously, no one's going to buy into anything.
I still think well, I want to ask you about Jeremy Fears and Xavier Booker and the freshmen, sort of what you know of them and what you've seen to what degree and how immediate you think their contributions will be.
So I've seen Jeremy Fears a lot. He obviously, where I'm living at, I've went to a lot of his high school games. You know, he brings an edge to him. Like, he's a great athlete, like one of the best quick twitch athletes I've seen in a while. Like, he'll shoot a shot and he'll go get his own rebound and dunk it. You know, like, he's a very quick twitch. He can defend. He has an edge about him that, like, I think coaches are going to love. Like, he's always challenging his teammates. He obviously needs to be able to shoot the ball a little bit better, but he loves to make people better. He can really pass the ball, you know. So, like, he'll bring just kind of – most freshmen have to catch up defensively. He'll be ready to compete defensively right away. And obviously he'll also be able to handle the ball and make people better. So I think he'll be an impact guy for sure. Booker is an interesting character. I watched a lot of him just today because I knew we were going to have this conversation. And obviously a lefty, he's the modern day, 4-5, 5-4, whatever you want to call him. Like, he's a hybrid because he can step out and shoot a three. Like he can roll, finish over the rim, good timing on block shots. Kind of Jaren Jackson-like. I don't know if he's as nimble, but like most big guys, like he's gonna have to learn how to play harder, like longer. And I think that's where the quality depth of the center kind of helps him. He's not going to be called upon to play 30 minutes, 35 minutes, but like he really can be an impact guy because he can score the ball and he's a threat when he rolls. He can catch, obviously can also pick and pop. The other two kids, the Norman and Carr kid, they're exciting because they're athletes, which I think really helps when you want to defend.
Yeah, I mean, Carr is obviously, we see the dunks. What I want to see is how much he lives on the glass, how much he lives defensively. If he does, there's another kid that can. In Norman, I don't know, he's got this weird bit of like a little bit smaller version of Wally Zerbiak in his game that you see that's sort of, there's a lot there. He's not just a spot-up guy.
He competes. I was out of the Garden for the game, and he was actually there. We were up in the 200 level, and I was sitting in the row behind him, just ironically, and I was talking to him, and like that kid loves basketball. His mom, they're both like they're all like they love hoop, and you can tell that he's really going to be like he's really bought into the Spartans. Like he can really obviously do a lot of different things other than shoot it. He's an athlete. Like I'm excited to see him, and I'm excited to see all the freshmen coming to play. I think they're all going to have their own impact in their own way.
One of the things so you wind up there only so many minutes, and impact, you need time to impact. The other position where it's curious how it all plays out is center. Like when you just look at the numbers, you're probably not, if you weren't going to bring in a transfer last year, you're not going to do it this year. To do it this year is to like admit you messed up last year. But not only that, I don't think it's is necessary because those young guys have come a certain way. You sort of know what Sissoko is for better or worse certain nights. The guy that I think has the highest upside as a rim runner, rebounder, defender is Carson Cooper. I just think he needs 15, 20 pounds of muscle because you could see on the glass that's where he got beat. Is he the guy, like when you look at what they need out of that position next year, if everybody else is back, is he the guy that has the best chance to take the biggest leap in terms of what is needed for that roster?
I would think, but I would try to get him a red shirt if I was them.
Cooper to redshirt next year.
Yeah, I would. Remember Shane Whittington? We did that with him at Western Michigan.
Yep.
He ended up being an NBA player because he knew, like, he played as a freshman, but then he redshirted as a sophomore so he could put on weight. And then the next year, like, as he was redshirting, he knew the speed of the game. He knew kind of how hard he had to work. And he still competed every day in practice, but it enabled him to put on weight and size. And then he came back and obviously ended up being an NBA player. So, like, I would try to redshirt him. Like, that, me personally, I don't know if he would do it, especially in this day and age of basketball.
Yeah.
But I think in long term, like, I agree with you. I think he has a huge upside. The kid shot 1% from the floor. Like, that's unreal. And obviously a lot of that's just being an athlete and being around the rim. But he can rebound the ball like he should be able to moving forward, especially if he puts on size. That's what I would try to do to kind of you have 4 guys at that spot. Like, that's a lot.
Well, that's the thing, but do they have are the other guys enough? So you watch UConn play where they've got 2 bigs, and maybe the best teams won't have 2 great bigs, but usually when you get deep into the tournament, you run into really solid veteran guys with sort of man strength, right? And so the question is, take Cooper out of the mix, and I don't think Cooper would redshirt, but would Sissoko, Xavier Booker, and Jackson Kohler as a trio have enough, do you think, to compete? And even if that's not what Michigan State's, even that's not the position that defines them, but you still need really solid play and better play on the glass there than they had a year ago.
I would think so. Like, I think those 4 guys can still take those minutes for sure. And I think based on who you play, I think Purdue kind of got exposed a little bit, right? Like, if you can play small ball against Purdue and bring Edey away from the basket, make him run around and be able to make threes, you can beat him. So, against them, maybe, honestly, none of those guys play. Maybe you, slide, again, if Malik and Joey come back, you play a really small ball lineup at times. I think that's what you have to find, though, right now in college basketball. You got to be diverse. You got to be able to throw out different lineups based on who you're playing to get a huge advantage. And obviously, if you can shoot, that's the best one. And that's where I think Booker does help. Like, he has the ability as a 5-man. Even though he's 6'11", he can step out and still shoot the 3. Do you think Joey Hauser and Malik Hall both come back?
No. Well, Hauser's announced he's leaving, so if he comes back, he's reversing course. At this point, I don't think so. There would have to be some sort of NIL deal in place, and that sort of thing could happen. But there would have to be something that enticed him. I do not think ultimately that Joey Hauser comes back, and nor do I think he should, because even if it was something like that, and there may be some conversations with lots of guys about what is there for them financially, and that's a different part of this conversation that ever existed before. But if you're Joey Hauser and you were done in your head and you're coming back just for the money, and I'm not saying, that stuff never really, to me, rarely works out in life, and especially if you're Hauser like that.
You're right on that. I learned that the hard way, but you're 100% right. You should not chase money. That's a fact.
And Hauser's a guy who's going to have a decent pro career if he wants it. Now, whether he has a chance in the NBA or not and can shoot well enough to be that guy. Like, what do you think of him as a potential pro prospect? Obviously, his brother's a little bigger. There's examples of guys who are, 3-point specialists like him. Obviously, you got to shoot in a certain percentage when you get that opportunity. Do you think he has a chance to stick at the next level?
I mean, I think he'll play overseas for a really long time. I think he'll get an opportunity in the NBA. I just don't know if he can defend well enough. He doesn't handle the ball. He's not Tyler Hero. He can't really handle the ball like that, right? Now he shoots 42% from three, moved the line back a little bit. Can he still shoot that clip? But who does he guard? I think that's the hardest thing about, in the NBA. Nowadays you got to be a 3-and-D guy, which normally means you have length and size.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's just hard. I know that there are examples like the Bryn Forbes where you shoot 58% in the preseason and you wind up having a career. I just think that something like that just doesn't usually happen. So maybe it's worth it. But if Malik Hall is the only, so let's say Hauser's gone. If Malik Hall is the only one of those veterans in there to return, do you still? I mean, what does that logjam look like? How much are you using Xavier Booker at the 4, for example? How much would you think they'd try to do that?
I think it then goes down to then you got to look at Hogard, Walker, and Akins. Do they all come back? Because if not, then the only reason I say that is now Malik can slide over and play some 3, where Booker can play 4, depending on the game. You know what I mean? And then you got Carr. Obviously he's a freshman. He's going to get minutes. I would say he's probably more of a power forward than he is anything else. Or is he a 3?
In terms of Carr? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he looks it's hard to say. I mean, he looks like I thought Brandon Dawson when he showed up would be a 3, and he wound up being best when he was a 4, right? And so you never really know till a guy is there and fits in, and every highlight of Cohen Carr these days is a dunk. So I don't really know what I'm looking at.
I agree. I was watching him. I'm like, I don't really know. It's all a dunk. I mean, it's going to be interesting because nowadays with the portal, and Michigan State really hasn't had people leave really. So you have 12 guys again. If Joey comes back, 11 guys. If Joey comes back, 12, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, they'll have 12. If Joey comes back, you'd have 13.
13.
You'd be full.
So you're full. But
I love you. I love you counting. I love you counting out loud. By the way, during the interview, that's awesome.
I wrote stuff down. I was prepared. I want to be prepared. I'm sitting here you can't play 13 guys. It's hard to play 12. I was talking to Ed Cooley the other day. He wants to only have 11 guys on scholarship, just in order to be able to play people to keep them happy. Because if they don't play, they're going to leave. So there's definitely going to be a juggling act here at some point. Even if Malik doesn't come back, you still have 11 guys that you have to keep happy. And you got 3 point guards, and you got 4 centers. That's
where I think it's more at the end. First of all, people are going to leave in this day and age because of the ability to transfer without sitting out. And I think one thing fans are going to have to get used to is there are going to be guys you're attached to that you don't see coming almost every year. Somebody is going to leave. You go, what? And that's just going to be the new reality, right? I mean, there's no way around that at this.
You would think, but that hasn't affected Michigan State yet.
Well, that's a good point. And I do think there are some things that Izzo has played well in this day and age. One was betting on his own guys last year and them seeing him not dip into the portal. I think with guys like Jaden Akins, not that Jaden Akins was ever going to leave, but Jaden Akins is a guy who has seen them pick him over Amani Bates twice. There is a level of loyalty to that probably, Plus, Jay Nakins has he comes from, as I say, not solid stock, so to speak, with his dad, and I mean, he's not somebody who's going to flake out on you.
Sure.
But so yeah, I mean, some of that might just be the personalities you've recruited. I mean, does Jeremy Fears, and the other thing that happens is if you time it right. So say Jeremy Fears comes in, and he doesn't love, because I guarantee you when Jeremy Fears committed, he did not anticipate Tyson Walker returning. There's just no way.
Yep.
And so he may not 100% love that, but he signed a NIL and he letter of intent. He's going to probably be there, and he may be convince him the Jason Richardson treatment. Right? Here's a guy who was an All-American in high school, who came off the bench on a national championship team and then got to be a star after that. And so if you spend a year with Walker and Hogard there, and you're playing a lesser role than you want, and the beauty for Michigan State is even at the end of that year, if he wasn't satisfied, if the next year he sees it's all going to open up for him and it's going to be his show, why would you leave then? You've waited through the stuff. So there might be some timing stuff that works out, but then you also never know. I personally remember Jeremy Fears Sr., his dad, and I don't know how much influence he has, but he was a guy who bounced around a little bit and was, he's a young guy. I mean, he's like 6 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
So you just never know the influence on guys and how patient they are and what's actually happening. But you think like there's enough minutes to be had, and for a Jeremy Fears Jr. with everybody coming back next year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the one thing that you got to appreciate about Izzo. Like even what he did with Holloman this year, like he finds minutes for guys, even if it's for like 3 minutes in the first half. And if you're playing well, then you kind of build trust, and then you get more. But at least you get some in live game action. You have film. You can go meet with the coach, see what you did right, see what you did wrong, and you slowly build trust, and then he gives you more minutes. Like I remember Drew Neitzel, he didn't start until halfway through his freshman year. And I remember some games he played limited minutes, but it was kind of just that, here's 3 minutes here. Now you turn that into 5. Now you turn that into 10. Now you turn that into 20. And now, in a big game, someone gets in foul trouble, you're in the game. And that's kind of how coaches always done it, which a lot of people don't anymore. They play based on a number, based on a ranking. Like you're a top 100 kid, so I'm going to get you – you're going to start. And coaches really kind of never been that way. The other thing I would kind of go back to, and this is a scary thing, when you do get a great recruiting class, those guys had a lot of options to go to. They have a lot of people in their ear. So those guys, it seems, in the modern-day era of the portal, are more likely to transfer than anyone else.
Yeah.
Because they expect so much more. They've been given so much coming into it, through AAU and things of that nature.
And
they have more expectations on them.
Yeah, their people expect more of them, too. They may be – that's the other problem. It's people convincing them to stick and go through it. What I want to ask you about A.J. Hogard. So we see the very best of him against Kansas State in that second half, where he is as good as he can be, or as good as we've seen him. And you see an upside of him that you go, God, when he's downhill and he's just got a knack around the rim, he can take over games. He's not always consistent in doing it. What is his ceiling? Like, when you've gone through 3 years, are you to some degree what you are, or is there a level of consistency? Can they arrive at a place where the less focused versions of A.J. Hogard no longer exist as a senior?
And I think so. I think he has to make a decision that he has to change his body, and he has to get in the best shape of his life. And if he decides to do that, like kind of the sky's the limit for him, I think where he kind of gets in trouble sometimes is he's just – I'm not saying he's like out of shape, but he's enough out of shape that it tires him out, and then bad things happen in a game. Well, I think if he really commits this offseason to completely overhaul – like I worked with Tyler Hero, like last year in the offseason, he decided to do that. Like he got a chef, like he committed to his body. And he's able to play more now, And I think if AJ does something like that where he just commits to his body, and especially now in the era of NIL and just what they have around them with nutrition and things of that nature, if he can just get in the best shape of his life, really the sky's the limit for the kid because he has an edge to him about him. He's tough. He can make shots. He can make people better. Like, he can really pass the ball, So, like, that would be my thing to that kid is, like, get in the best shape of your life and let's see what happens.
Were you surprised that Hunter Dickinson left Michigan?
I mean, no, not anymore. I think anything's possible, like at this point in college basketball.
Yeah.
And I also think it's very hard to coach your kids.
I mean, I don't want you to. I mean, you're still somebody who's perhaps has relationships in the coaching business that need to not be burned.
Yeah.
But I would say that, like, I think he was the reason they didn't make the NCAA tournament. Jet Howard. I think he was the worst player on that team because anybody else in that role would have been better to be on the court because they weren't able to hold him accountable for the things he didn't do, and that permeates the roster. And you just, to me, go ahead.
The other one I think is to be fair, like Hunter Dickinson made some terrible decisions on social media and like during podcasts and things of that nature, and no one it wasn't once; it was multiple times. So in me, if I'm him, and no one on the staff or in the university came, and obviously, like, I'm a Michigan State guy, so I don't really care about Michigan. I don't really like it, whatever. But, like, no one came to his aid and tried to help him and, like, teach him, like, no, we shouldn't do this. So now you're at the end of the season, you're looking at, like, wait a minute, I need to go somewhere where people kind of have my back, and if I do make mistakes, they're gonna help me. They're gonna coach me. They're gonna tell me not to do that. You know, like, even some of the antics on the court that he had, you know, like, I think everyone could have done better with that, and they didn't. So I guess it doesn't surprise me that he's leaving, and hopefully, and I'm sure, like, if someone's going to get paid through NIL, like, that guy's going to make a lot of money.
And frankly, if the NBA doesn't want these big fellas anymore, then I hope they do. I hope there's at
totally
least
different game, though, right?
Yeah.
I think nowadays you have to say, if anyone wants to argue that the NBA and college basketball aren't totally different games, they're out of their mind. Like, the last 2 years, the National Player of the Year is not on a draft board. So if the best player in college basketball is not on a draft board, how is it even relevant? It's not the same game at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, right, it's just it's a game where size can still, it's a more condensed to the hoop game, you know, size can still, there aren't as many good athletes that can burn somebody who's not as quick with their feet. Yeah, I mean, size can still, to a degree, though, where you see the college game following is we've seen all these behemoth big men in the Big Ten get knocked out in the NCAA tournament by quickness, by length, by the things that the NBA values. So, I mean, maybe the Big Ten is just also a little behind that. I mean, I still think the sweet spot, and one of the things Michigan State has going for it is you've got guys who are really good college players but not surefire pros. And that allows you to have guys for multiple years. It allows you to get old and still be very, very good. And that's a thing that's a hard thing to a needle to thread, because if you get a guy who's too good, like, I mean, the value of Jet Howard is almost zero. You go to the NIT in 1 year, he's gone to the pros. That's not even a guy, and I understand he's Juwan Howard's kid, but outside of him being Juwan Howard's kid, that's not even a guy who's worth recruiting anymore if that's what it results in for you. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense, and that's where, like, the NBA not allowing, like, kids to go right out of high school probably kind of messes it up a little bit.
Yeah.
It probably should just allow that, because it is messing up a lot of people's rosters, but so are a lot of other things, you know, like, you know, the transfer and play right away, it's wild. You add the COVID thing to it where people get extra years, that's crazy. Then you get NIL, and now you're not supposed to be able to, like, induce people to come based off NIL, but clearly it's happening. You know, so, like, there's a lot of things in college basketball that are really kind of messed up. I think everyone's always going to try to go like a Jet Howard. You're going to take him if you can. I agree with you, though. I don't know. Now that you say it, the upside isn't always there for sure, because even if you win with him for 1 year, like, what do you sacrifice for that? You know.
100%. Rick, I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I hope we can do this again really soon. Thanks for giving us all the time.
Yeah, man, anytime. I'm always available. Appreciate you having me.
Sounds good. That's Rick Carter. Was on Tom Izzo's staff, is a graduate manager for a couple years in the early 2000s, and then has been an assistant at Western Michigan, where I met him, Xavier, Missouri, Fairfield, under Ed Cooley, who just went to Georgetown. I mean, that's how that connection is really well connected in the college basketball world. Jason, anything that stood out from that conversation?
A lot of hot takes there, but I've been watching Cohen Carr highlights while you guys were talking. I saw a couple jump shots.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah, there's a lot of dunks in there, but there's some mid-range.
Yeah.
Some baseline, mid-range stuff.
Yeah,
you hater.
I'm not a Cohen Carr hater. I just haven't seen anything yet. I'm hoping the kid's amazing.
Wait, Carson Cooper red shirts next year? What do
No, that's a little.
What odds we got?
So yeah, 0. So, but he does have a point, and the thing is, I think Cooper's ahead of the kid he's talking about. But there was a kid named Shane Whittington from like Paw Paw, who was at Western Michigan. He was actually almost quit basketball early on. He like was a better baseball player than he was basketball player at one point in his college basketball career. Yeah. Like they would do this end of season wiffle ball thing on the court, and he was just like almost breaking the arena with wiffle ball home runs. But he needed a redshirt. They needed to play him as a true freshman because they had an injury, and then they redshirted him, and he put on strength and began to take the game seriously. I think his trajectory is just different, but I can see the comparison because he did become a guy who played in the NBA for a few years and made a ton of money overseas.
How long ago was that?
This is he was one of the stars of the Western team that made the NCAA tournament in like 2014. Okay. It was post me. I was there when he was like a freshman, when he was the guy who was gonna, and then I had been gone.
Well, it's always about you.
I didn't
put yourself in the story.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, we are going to take another quick break. Change of plans. No Harry Gagnon on the Masters, but filling in more than adequately, the Tiger Woods whisperer, Dan Kilbridge, who works for bookies.com and spends a lot of time handicapping and putting best bets together for the Masters. And we'll get his takes and his thoughts right after this. Couch in the Rube, presented by Skymint Premium Cannabis and Front 43 and Cask Company.
Hopcat exists at the intersection of great beer and delicious food, complemented by music, art, community, and comfort. Home to the best-in-class beer experience served by craft beer experts. Guests can expect a casual, inviting local gathering place with some of the best damn burgers and fries you'll find in Michigan. Hopcat is proud to be an official supporter of Peyton Thorne. Show your Spartan pride by ordering the iconic Peyton Thorne burger, created by the man himself. And don't forget about Spartan basketball. Hopcat is your pre-game headquarters for basketball all season long. Catch the game at any of our locations: East Lansing, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Kalamazoo, and Holland. To plan your next trip to Hopcat, visit www.hopcat.com. Come enjoy irresistible, award-winning, handcrafted donuts and locally roasted coffee at Groovy Donuts. Surprise your family or coworkers with special holiday designs and flavors, or put the perfect finishing touch on an event with a custom order. Birthdays, weddings, gender reveals, our friends at Groovy Donuts are your answer. Experience the Groovy Donuts difference for yourself on Lake Lansing Road in East Lansing or in Williamston. Get more information or place an order at groovydonuts.com. Wherever you are on your cannabis journey, let Skymint Premium Cannabis be your guide, your friend, and your place. Whether you're curious about cannabis or a seasoned connoisseur, Skymint's knowledgeable staff will help you with a vast selection of products to choose from to fit your needs. Skymint believes access to the best cannabis helps people do good and feel good, so they grow it right here in Michigan, giving you high-quality, locally grown cannabis at highly accessible prices. Visit skymint.com for special offers and location information throughout Michigan, and use the promo code CouchAndRube20 for 20% off your first visit. Skymint Cannabis. You'll love this place.
Find our live stream, podcast archives, as well as show, affiliate, and sponsorship information at our website, spotlightmediastudios.com.
Couch in the Rube, presented by Skymint Premium Cannabis and our friends at Front 43 Neighborhood Pub and Cask and Company Kitchen and Bar. Great place if you want to watch the Masters. Just chill, have a brew, have a meal, have the Masters on in the background, watch the Tigers lose as the day moves on. Very pleased now to be joined by a good friend of mine, a man whose wedding I am officiating in a month's time.
Another one.
It's
like a part-time gig for you.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Dan Kilbridge from bookies.com does college football, golf, all things for bookies, and formerly was like the preeminent Tiger Woods beat writer for several years for Golf Week. Dan, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Graham. If you could just introduce me like that, just like that at the wedding, I think that would be perfect. You really nailed it.
I'll write that. I'll play the recording and try to get that down. Is this one of your favorite weeks of the year when you're handicapping a golf? Because you handicap a lot of golf, but a tournament that everybody's invested in.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is my favorite week in that sense. When you're getting texts from friends, everyone wants to know who to pick in their pool, and you've obviously got every one of the best golfers in the world at your disposal to choose from. From like a purely, handicapping, grinding situation, I almost prefer the low-key events like a good Honda Classic where Chris Kirk is like favored to win, because those are where you can find some hidden gems. Whereas like betting winner, top 10 at the Masters, you're not going to get rich doing that, but I love that golf betting is, it used to be golf was at the center of discussion this week. Now it's very much golf betting. I mean, that's just become so prominent, and golf is such a great sport for it. You can do it so many ways. I truly like just sitting from home. It was great being there, obviously, but this is a fantastic week to be kind of at home and, just getting lost in the betting board and all that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, well, and for those who, I think a lot of people know, listen to the show. I mean, for what, at least 3 years, you were pretty much on the Tiger Woods beat. Like, you were walking practice rounds with him. He was as comfortable with you as any writer, and you got some incredible stories. So that was a fun place to be in that moment. But there is something to being on the couch and not having to pound the pavement, so to speak, and looking at it from a different perspective.
There is, and it's funny. I can say that now very easily. Tiger has not contended at a major since the 2019 Masters, which I did cover. So yeah, if you were to win this weekend, wish I was there. But no, I do. Like, I love the grind. You're exactly right. It was one of the best gigs in the world, basically, just following Tiger. He was basically, the beat. It was show up and what's Tiger doing that day? Who's he going to play a practice round with? And you would pick up just so many good betting tidbits if you knew what you were looking for. Just being on property and searching and talking to people all day. It's a really great place to get on the ground betting info. Like, for example, this week I would always scour the putting green at Augusta and see if I could find anyone tinkering with multiple putters. Like, I remember one year, Justin Thomas, I think he had 3 different options he was trying to figure out. I'm like, hey, on these greens, you should not be trying to figure out what putter you're going with on Tuesday. So that's always a big red flag. But yeah, with Tiger, I actually had a big bet in on him to win the British Open at Carnoustie in 2018. All my colleagues are making fun of me. Like, you just put 100 pounds on Tiger Woods to win. Are you kidding me? And he had the lead on the back nine. And I think the statute of limitations has long since expired for any journalistic transgressions that I may have just confessed to. But you want to talk about a wild ride, like having a ticket on Tiger to win when you're inside the ropes coming down the stretch of Carnoustie. That was a day I won't soon forget.
It's almost like playing the round yourself. It's
very close.
So this week, and if you go to bookies.com right now, it pops up. It is the main story, the best 2023 Masters prop bets and picks you won't see anywhere else from Dan. And so I want to go through these a little bit, things you like a lot. You like Scottie Scheffler to finish top 10 and Tiger Woods to make the cut.
That might be my favorite bet of the week. It's like a parlay at PointsBet with plus 150 odds. And so Scheffler top 10, given, obviously what happened last year, the just trajectory he's been on this season, is the number 1 player in the world. But he has the softest hands, truly, in the game. Around the greens, whenever he needs to get an up and down, he somehow finds a way. And that's more important at this golf course than I'd say anywhere else, which is why, he is a ridiculously short favorite. Usually it's up in the plus. I think last year John Rahm was the favorite at plus 900. Scheffler is plus 650 this week. So that just tells you what kind of run he's been on. And top 10, he's minus 150. I don't love playing minus 150. It's golf. It could happen. But I do think Tiger Woods making the cut is an even bigger lock than Scheffler top 10. So I like combining those two to get the plus 150 odds.
Bernard Langer, top senior, at plus 350 at DraftKings. Bernard Langer, top senior. This is not on my radar, but you like this.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, like 4 years ago in Michigan, you could not bet Scotty Scheffler to win the Masters. And now we're sitting here talking about firing off bets from the couch on Bernard Langer, top senior. It's what a time to be alive. And Langer, I think, this was almost a lock before I found the Scheffler Tiger parlay there. But you talk about Langer, so he's plus 350. The only guy who's above him is Phil Mickelson. And Mickelson, I don't know if you've seen any images or video from the grounds. He looks like hell warmed over. It's like the Don Draper in his darkest days type vibes. I think Phil has completely lost his identity with what he's done the past 2 or 3 years, because he used to pride himself on showing up at Augusta, showing up at every course, and considering himself the smartest guy in the room, the most charming guy in the room, the classiest. That was kind of his persona, and certainly not everyone thought that of him, but that was what he thought of himself. And now, this week we see Phil turning down a press conference. Apparently he was offered one and didn't want to participate. That's like Snoop Dogg turning down a blunt circle. No, I'm good. I'm good today, fellas. No, thanks. Phil Mickelson used to inhale press conferences. That was his setting, where he could sound off, get on the soapbox, crack jokes, be buddy with the media, and just think he crushed it every single time, which he often did, admittedly. But I see none of that guy anymore. The courses they're playing on LIV are not useful competitive preparation for Augusta, so I think Phil's going to miss the cut. I think it could get ugly. And then I got to give a shout out to my buddy Nolan, who, when we were talking about this bet, I kind of had a mind to maybe look at Fred Couples around 400 or plus 400, I believe, always frisky around here. But Fred Couples has had some well-documented back problems over the years. I think the cold weather, potentially the rain, not going to be good for him. Bernard Langer, it's also his 40th Masters. And so he's still competing out there. He finished T29 a couple of years ago. We like Bernhard Langer at top senior, plus 350.
Before we get to another one, Jason, you have what are your top bets?
I like the Langer one. That guy's in better shape than any of us. But I like, as Dan was saying, I just think the top 25 guys are usually the ones that are going to compete to win it all. And I love Jordan Spieth. Now, he could go out, shoot a 63 and then a second round 75. But at 17-1, guys, I think that's good value right there. And also Cam Young playing really well at 30-1.
Nice. I always want one guy who's 17-1 isn't bad for Spieth, but I always want one guy playing on Sunday who I have at long odds, and usually I will hedge 40 times over to get there, and so I'm not actually going to make any money.
That's golf betting.
Yeah, but that's all you want is one guy that you feel like you're invested in coming down the stretch. You also like Dustin Johnson to miss the cut. Is this a anti-live DJ choice here?
This is actually a pro DJ choice.
Oh.
And let me explain for a second. Everyone loves DJ. He says what he means. He's very brief. He doesn't pretend to be anybody he's not. He's the least corny guy in golf, I believe I called him today. And so of all the guys who left for LIV, there was not much remaining animosity with DJ among any of the tour players, because it was he'd reached that status where it was it's just DJ being DJ. Of course he's going to take, the $150 million and go chill with Paulina on the yacht for the rest of his days. And he'd never really been hypocritical. He certainly never pretended to meddle in foreign affairs or the global economy. So with that, I don't think he really has any motivation for this tournament. I think he's content with himself. I think he's content with where he's at. And I just don't think he's been practicing enough or playing, well enough in the LIV events to justify liking him to make a charge. I don't like him to stick around the weekend. And that's it's a juicy price. I believe it was
plus 350
or
yeah.
plus 350.
Yeah.
which, yeah, defending champ, obviously, he's right up there on the board, but I don't think he has any motivation to go out and prove anything for Liv. He's probably, if anything, like, thinks it's stupid what they're doing with all the logos and all that stuff. He just kind of plays along. And, I didn't write this today, but I guess I can say it on the air. It could certainly be a lighting issue, a framing thing, a wardrobe fit. DJ looks a little heavier, far be it from me. I'm the last person who should be pointing out anyone's physical fitness or dietary habits. However, DJ looks like he's, in the early stages of a beer gut, like a nice, solid old man, done working out for life beer gut. I think he's going to retire pretty gracefully quicker than we think. Wow.
And plus 350 is good value. I mean, even if you lose that, you're playing with terrific value. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, it is like it is. We were talking about this the other day. This is the easiest major cut to make by far, just because the field is smaller and there's so many ceremonial participants who really have no shot of competing at their age, the past winners. So it is kind of, it's much different than if you were to take him for a miscut at the U.S. Open. But like you said, the value, he was the course that Dustin Johnson was playing last week. I used to play all the time for $45 and shoot 105. And that was actually, I think I might have broken 100 there, which says a lot about the type of preparation that they got last week. It's not a good test, and I don't think the LIV guys are going to be dialed in.
Dan, you're a beautiful man. I'll also include that in the ceremony, and appreciate
a couple times if you want.
Appreciate you coming on and sharing all this knowledge with us, man. I'll talk to you real soon.
Anytime, man. Thanks, guys.
That is Dan Kilbridge from bookies.com. You go to bookies.com, you can check out his best bets and the reasons for them. We appreciate him filling in for our man Harry. We're not dumping Harry. We just lost Harry.
Appointment went long for Harry.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Yeah. Doctor needs to take care of Harry. He needs to take care of Harry. That's what it is. Good show, man.
Yeah, man.
We appreciate Dan coming on. We appreciate Rick Carter coming on. Thanks to Front 43 and Cask and Company. Thanks as well to Skymint. And if you're still listening to the show, I think you're well familiar with Skymint. We will be back Thursday with your Groovy Donut Twitter questions. Talk to you then. Couch on the Roof.